Tibia, despite how it looks, can be an actual hard game to learn, especially so for brand new players, because it's a 25-year-old game which to this day hasn't had advertising or promotion, and the few new players that find out about it do not have the proper tools or tutorials to learn how to play. Hopefully this series of Tibia 101 will help ease the starting point for some of you. On this video I will cover the creation of character, the world types, and break down the vocations to choose from. But before that, a brief description of Tibia is that it is an open world game that is not free to play. Even though it can be played on a free account, the content you're given is about 5% of the actual game, and with a very lack of quality of life aspects of the game. For example, with the map being as big as it is, as a premium account you can just take boats to other cities for a small gold fee. As free account, you can only walk from city to city, which can easily be 5 to 10 minute walks. The spells you can use are almost non-existent as a free account, and the spawns to hunt at are highly outdated and inferior to the premium areas. So to properly test out the game, you must experience it as a premium account. The only thing that doesn't change, be it as a free or a premium, is the beginner island of Downport, and overall the game experience until level 10 or so. The appeal of the game is the never-ending grinding, be it on levels, as there is no level cap, achievements, bestiary, farming gold, training skills, and a lot more things that can be done. Obviously, the appeal of those things are different for players, and the most common thing to do is just to grind levels, which compared to other games where you have level caps, in Tibia you get a sense of freedom or slavery from being able to just continue to get levels and seeing your character get stronger over time. Its actual playstyle is very repetitive, as more often than not you will have to hunt on the same places for long periods of time while doing the same actions, but slacking on any point could lead to a death, and that's another of the appeals of Tibia, or at least it used to be, is the harsh punishment when dying. Unlike other games, if you die on Tibia, you actually could lose a lot of time. These can be very different based on the level and how much experience you make per hour, but it could easily be multiple hours of progress just for one death. And that's my brief description of the game, so now let's begin. For starters, you will need to create an account. If you don't have one already, using my referral link will be helpful to me, but be aware that you're automatically given one server choice, so I recommend to just choose a random name for the first character. Then, when creating your actual character, you're given 3 options: name, gender, and server. Pick your preferred name, and as for the gender, is for purely cosmetic purposes, as both male or female have different outfits. Here's a sample of some of the outfits with add-ons on. Most of them can be obtained in-game through quests or items, but there is also unique outfits for the store with Tibia coins. Keep in mind that there's also the option to change sex and name with Tibia coins if you really want to. But lastly, the most important thing will be choosing the world, because unfortunately one of the biggest problems of this game is the community, or rather the troublesome guilds of players that dominate a server and make it hard or impossible for outsiders to play in. Since this is considered okay by the developers, the best thing you can do is try to avoid playing on those servers. However, this is ever changing, and it's hard to say which server is a good choice. My recommendation for North Americans is Shanera or Marvera. If anyone watching wants to recommend a server, feel free to leave it down your suggestions in the comments below. Also, something to be aware of when picking a server is the different types available. First, the yellow and green icons stand for before or after Battle Eye, the anti-cheat Tibia uses, because at one point the game was very heavily dominated by bots, and it lasted a few years, during which a lot of characters and gold was made through botting. Eventually, Battle Eye was introduced per server basis and now is applied to all servers. However, the damage done from botting was permanent on those servers. It's more common to see more players on yellow servers than on green, but that is not always a good thing, as that could just be a dominated server by a big build. Also, due to the fact that the yellow servers are the oldest, they have the majority of characters available. In the Bazaar, for example, it's pretty common to find cheap high-level characters and also low levels with very high skills. In green servers is the opposite of that. Next up is the world types. Open PvP can be considered normal PvP, in which you can be attacked by players, but it's not going to be too hard, as there are things in place to protect you from unintended fights, and also limitations on how often players can PK. Optional PvP is where you cannot be attacked by players. This could be considered the safest, but at the same time, because people can be killed by players, they tend to be more disrespectful towards others. Retro Open PvP is servers with the older PvP system, far more punishing than in Open, And Retro Hardcore is the one I recommend the least for newcomers, as PvP is encouraged there and rewarded with experience, so it can be terrible for a solo or a new player. With that said, the most played servers tend to be Open PvP. Additionally, there are new servers being released every 3 months or so, and those are the perfect place to start on, as everyone starts from zero and it's a lot easier to find players around your level to play with. Because Tibia is an old game that doesn't get new players often, it could be hard to find players at your level range, which is why a lot of people focus more towards playing solo or start with friends. Moving on, once you have your character, your goal will be to reach level 8, and then you can choose a vocation which will be permanent, and also which city you want to start on. At the start, in Downpour, the beginner island, you are given a very minimal chance to test the vocations by leaving the fortress through one of the 4 exits, which will turn you into one of the 4 vocations: Knights, Druids, Sorcerers or Paladins. The Knights are a melee class that relies mostly on physical attacks and have the highest HP with the lowest healing. At the lower levels, you can only use normal attacks and the playstyle is rather slow and simple. You can only hit one monster at a time, and due to how the shielding works in this game, it's important to avoid getting hit by more than 2 monsters, as more than that will start doing full damage. As you level up, you start unlocking new spells, which at the start will also be single target, and then later you get a few AoEs. As you can see, the playstyle evolves as you get more levels, and after 90 there won't be major changes to how to play. Rather, it comes down to perfecting the rotation of your spells and knowing how many monsters you can take on. Additionally, unlike the other vocations, Knights have 3 different main skills to choose from: Club, Sword and Axe. These are separate from each other, and it's important to stick to one of them, because your damage input is highly dependent on the skills. So my recommendation is to pick Club or Sword, but also my real recommendation is to buy a character on the Tibia Bazaar once you get an understanding of the game, because the skills for the Knights are the most important compared to the other vocations, and they also take the most amount of time and money to get. So getting a low level Knight with over 100 skills is a major boost to your game, and the earlier you do it, the better it will be later on. Next up is the Paladins. Similar to the Knights, they have a rather slow start and have a similar playstyle of just attacking one target at a time, but from a distance. They are considered a hybrid between Knights and Mages. On the early levels, it's recommended to use spears and a shield, as it is cheaper that way, and then move on to a bow and arrows later. However, it's not until level 150 that Paladins pick up some speed, as they get access to AoE arrows, and then it's a lot better for leveling. Until then, they are pretty uneventful and very simple to play. Just like the Knights, this is a vocation that relies on high skills to have a better time, so it's recommended to buy a character with over 100 on distance if possible. But even if you don't, it's not as a big deal like Knights. Paladins gain distance skill quick, so after a few days it gets better. Also, even though they are the most common to play as a solo, they are by far the slowest vocation to level, and it's hard to find teams as the amount of paladins available is higher than other vocations. Next up, the mages. Druids are the healers and sorcerers are the damage dealers. Both are played the same when hunting solo, and in team hunts the difference comes down to druids always having to heal the knights, and the sorcerers often just focusing on themselves. But both have a similar playstyle, which is around the use of runes and spells. The main difference is the elements they can use, and they are both weak in terms of HP, but have a high mana pool and high healing. Also be aware that druids are often more needed because a healer is always necessary on team hunts, and sorcerers tend to be played more often as a solo mage, although regardless, the game revolves more around team hunting than solos. Unlike the knights and paladins, they unlock AoE hunting quite early. By level 30, they can already use the AoE runes to great success. These boost their leveling a lot compared to the other vocations, hence why they are usually better for solo hunting. However, when AoE hunting, it means luring and killing more monsters per turn, and since mages have the lowest HP, it's very dangerous for a new player, and a lot of guides of where to hunt with mages already assume you have some mastery over a mage. But it's also true that it's by far the most optimal way to play, even if it's riskier. The alternative is to use more single target spells like you do at Downpour, although they're stronger versions, until you reach level 45, which then you can use the strongest single target rune, the Sudden Death, and this is a very high damage for hunting in single target. The downside is that it's much more expensive, and even though ideally it would be good to rely on spells, there's limitations to where they can hunt with just spells alone, and even then it's not efficient. So hunting with AoE runes remains the ideal way to hunt. It will require to get used to being at high risk most of the times and keep tabs of your mana and HP. All I have said is mostly all about solo playing. When it comes to team hunts, all vocations are played differently. Knights become tanks and their job is doing some damage, but mostly keeping the monsters on them by protecting the party and then looting the monsters. Paladins vary depending on the spawns. On some they help with luring monsters, in others they even become secondary tanks or just focus on doing damage. Druids are usually on mana shield to keep themselves safe, and their priority is to heal the knights while doing damage. And sorcerers focus on damage the most while also luring monsters, and occasionally, especially on higher levels, they are the secondary healers to the knights, but that's later on when you're hunting spawns that are too hard on the knight. That's what I got for a breakdown of the vocations of Tibia. There will be a video focused on how to play each vocation, because this one was already getting long, and keep in mind that most of what I said is stuff that you start to experience yourself as you get levels. So I just want you to get the main idea behind each vocation in order to choose which one fits you best. Thank you for watching this introduction to Tibia, and hope you continue to watch the rest of the series of Tibia 101.